another episode of the Solve It team. I'm Judy from the Technovation team and coming to you from sunny Los Angeles, California. Sometimes when we try to solve a problem, we quickly realize there's a lot of different factors we need to think about before we can make any decisions on how to fix them. Many times, we don't even realize everything that goes into these problems, nor do we understand how making a decision on one input can result in disproportionate effects on something we are trying to improve. These types of problems are difficult to solve because they're often part of a large, complex system. Complex systems are all around us. It's important to try to understand these systems as well as possible if we are trying to fix something about them. A complex system currently impacting our entire world in one way or another is COVID-19. It's affecting us in many ways, short-term, long-term, and other ways we possibly don't even know yet. We're seeing the effects on the health of people in our community, our loved ones, maybe even ourselves. We're also feeling the effects of our stress levels as we're trying to adjust to new schedules, new ways of doing things like homeschooling, working from home, or even looking for a job from home. Long-term wise, we can possibly take a look at our environment. Now that we're doing less commuting, we're creating less pollution from our traveling. Already in India, the air pollution is getting better, which means fewer people may die from pollution 6 months to a year from now. And then there are the much longer term effects. There are a lot of unknowns there, such as how the sustained lockdown order will impact the environment, how it will impact local, national, and global economies. In a complex system, when one thing changes, many other things are impacted by that specific change. Luckily for us, we live in the age of technology. As our Technovation girls and families know, technology is key in solving today and tomorrow's problems. Each year, they code solutions, creating apps or using artificial intelligence to solve some of the biggest problems our world is currently facing. In our Technovation Girls program, teams of girls identify and create apps to address difficult, messy, complex problems like domestic violence. One factor that makes domestic violence a complex problem is that it can be something that is very difficult to prove because it happens with someone the victim may know, and oftentimes in the privacy of a home. With a problem like this, there are many things to consider before making final decisions on a solution, and many times a lot of information that needs to be organized. Here is an area of a complex system and problems where technology can help us tremendously in our search for a solution. Let's look at how girls around the world have used technology to help them find solutions to complex problems such as domestic violence. In 2019, Team LPSN, a Technovation Girls finalist from Spain, created When and Where. This is an emergency response app that users can turn on to track their location if they are out by themselves, for example, like on an evening jog. It flags strange activity. For example, if the user quickly switches or they're moving away from their destination rapidly. It flags this movement to trusted contacts or emergency services. That same year, Team Decoders created JZA. This is an app that helps women who are survivors of domestic abuse by providing information about domestic violence, offering legal, psychological, and medical consultation, and connecting users with an SOS emergency hotline. As you can see, both had unique solutions to this difficult, complex problem that countries, communities, and individuals struggle with each and every day. There are many problems our world is currently facing, and each year our Technovation girls take them on with the use of technology. So although girls tackle all sorts of complex problems in our program, one of the most frequently tackled each year is domestic violence. To share a bit more about this particular problem and what makes it so complex, I'm so excited to welcome
Blair Decker from Hogan Lovells law firm. Blair, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell our viewers a little bit more about what you do and what types of problems you solve?
Sure. I'm happy to be here with you today. I am the senior pro bono attorney at Hogan Lovells, which is an international law firm. I work in the pro bono department, which just does free legal services for people that need help. And we also advise nonprofit organizations as well. As part of my role, I represent victims of domestic violence who are seeking custody of their children, who are seeking protection from the courts, and I also represent them in the criminal case against their abuser by helping them assert their rights as a crime victim.
It sounds like you work with the very complex justice system here in the United States. Can you explain what are the goals and the rules in our justice system? What role do you play in it?
Sure. So the justice system, the goal is to achieve justice, but that is a lot harder, of course, in reality. Our system in the US is adversarial, which means that there are two sides and they go up against each other. And a neutral fact finder, which is sometimes a judge or in some cases even a jury of people, decides what will happen in a case. So they'll decide whether or not somebody is responsible for injuring another person, or they'll decide whether or not a defendant in a criminal case did or didn't commit the crime. Um, there are a lot of challenges, though, in our system. Um, Often people don't have lawyers, and so it's really hard for them to navigate the complex justice system. On top of that, there are, of course, existing issues of racism, of misogyny, and so it's definitely a really challenging system, especially for individuals to navigate. And when you add challenges like people who don't speak English, people who can't miss a day of work and have to go to court, it's a really challenging system.
Can you give us an example of a case where you had to help someone trying to access the system and understand our legal system? Because to me, the system in itself seems and sounds like a very complex problem where sometimes explaining one part of it requires you having to explain a bunch of other parts of the system.
Yeah. So, in my role as the senior pro bono attorney, I represent, like I said, a lot of victims of domestic violence. I can think of one case. I'll call the client Jennifer. That's not her real name. Jennifer was living with her boyfriend who was very abusive towards her, physically abusive, and they both had a child together. And so, while Jennifer was experiencing this abuse, she also had competing concerns. So, for example, if she left the abuser, could she support herself financially? Could she support her daughter? Would she have a house to go to live in? And so thankfully I was connected to her because she went to the court and said, I need help getting a civil protection order. What do I do? And so I helped her navigate the court process. So we had an initial meeting where she told me everything that had happened. We prepared her case. We went to court. We tried to negotiate with her abuser. He refused to agree to a civil protection order against him. And so we went to trial, and my client testified about what he had done in front of him, which is really hard to do. And luckily, the judge believed her because she was telling the truth, and she got the civil protection order.
So it's not just one problem that you're solving, but it seems like this problem also has a lot of intricate and other factors that you need to consider before making a decision. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And at every turn in a case, when you are thinking, okay, well, for example, ask for custody, then you have to think, okay, does my client want to allow the abuser to have visitation? And what will that look like? And so at every turn in the case, if you are trying to do one thing, then that will have impacts, in some other area of your client's life.
It sounds like you're working with a lot of cases that are very complex and where you have to make a lot of decisions and gather a lot of information before making a final decision on what solution you want to pursue. How do you begin to break it down so that it is easier to get started? What are the first three things you do?
Sure. So the first thing that I do is gather information. It's really important that early on you get as much information as possible. So that often comes from your client, that might come from reports, maybe from police or medical reports. And then it might come from other people that are witnesses. So step one is always fact gather. The second thing I do is, of course, make sure that I understand the legal challenges that we're going to have to navigate. Often I already know how we'll deal with a certain legal issue based on my experience. But if I don't know, I'll have to do legal research. And importantly, when I am working on these cases, I'm always working with a team. So I never handle anything on my own. And I think that that's really important to get other people's perspectives.
Interesting. Blair, in a really messy world where lots of people and organizations have to come together to make change, how do you keep yourself motivated to keep pushing for this positive change?
I'm motivated by my clients. I think that their stories really compel me. I mean, that is why I do my job. So I consider myself very lucky. When somebody asks me for help, I look at that as an opportunity, to help someone. And that is really amazing.
Blair, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Your insight and experience is certainly going to be helping a lot of people who, like you, are trying to make a positive change in our messy and complex world.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much. Hey, Technovation girls! Have you shared your amazing work with your friends? Help us empower more girls to take on these big world problems with technology by sharing this video. Remember, when girls help each other, we are stronger together.